Okay. Gosh. Yay, not as late as last time. Well, technically longer late, I guess, because I'm like a week late. Sorry. Hey, Lucian. How are you, sweetheart? Hey, guess who? You're right. I'm good. I've been a bit ill. Like, my pain's been a bit of a fucking dickhead lately. And yeah, so I've just kind of hid away for a while. But annoying as it is, it's not exactly like a... Yeah, it could be worse. It could always be worse, I guess. So I just go by that. It could be worse. Say hi to the lady. Hi, Sally. Yes, I saw that. I'm going to reply to you in a little bit. I was kind of waiting for my head to not be like a absolute pickle. Because, yeah, I are not brain good. But yes, I will message you in a little bit, sweetheart. I hope you're doing good. Hey, Gray. You all right, sweetheart? Right. I did find some rather interestings. Mostly again from the no sleep. They just seem to be having a lot yeah, they just seem to be a lot better at the moment. Like the ghost stories or things like that seem to be very I don't know. Considering they're a mix of real and, I guess, fictionalized stuff, they just seem very and like if I'm reading a ghost story, I want it to be like, what? Not like an unsatisfying wank. Like I don't want a ghost story to be like that. So most of them again from no sleep. Let's see. There we go. Where was the one that I wanted to read last time? Oh. Hey, dude brothers, you're right, love. And yet, I do love ghost stories. This, however, is not ghost story, this one. I really liked it because it's like kind of a SCP creepypasta kind of thing, but not. And yeah, I just thought it was quite weird. So, I'm a worker at my local reptile house. We keep a series of secret exhibits near the back, ones we don't allow the public to see. I layer the bottom of the tank with wood chips, give the enclosure a few squirts with the water mister for good measure. I take a step back to admire my handiwork, then return to adjust the angle of a carefully positioned branch, carefully positioned to look as natural as possible, of course. I flick the switch beside the tank, and both the UV and heat lamps start to glow. They'll have the tank at optimum temperature in about 10 minutes or so, I'd say. I tap a little button on my headset and it connects back to HQ. I say, HQ, like it's some big dramatic location. It's an office about 5 minutes walk away through the reptile house, staffed at this moment in time by a single dude, but still, it's our HQ. Hey, Matteo, I say into the mic, and after a crackle he replies, Hey, Kenny, what's up, dude? The tank for our latest guest is complete. What, the gator? Gator? No, dude, for the frilled snake. Oh, right, yeah, sweet. I think they're planning on moving it in tomorrow. Tomorrow? Why? It can go in right now. The enclosure's done, man. Well, it's just you and me here tonight, bro, so if you want, you can come and get the snake yourself. I sigh. Sure, I'm on my way. All right. I click the mic off. I take a step back and look around. The air is thick and warm, and despite it being a cold and windy night beyond the walls, the atmosphere in the reptile house is decidedly tropical. This section of the building is below ground, meaning it's a hell of a lot larger on the inside than it looks on the outside. We can have a section open to the public. They can come and visit, stop at the cafe, buy stuff at the gift shop, see the reptiles. The stuff you'd expect to do and see. Tree frogs, lizards, snakes and turtles. We even have some alligators. But we're different to most other places. The majority of our inhabitants are not visible to the public, and for good reason, because here we take care of the reptiles that, to be honest, all things considered, probably shouldn't exist. They're kept here, supposedly temporarily, a stopping point before they're moved to some cryptozoology lab somewhere for the proper study and analysis. That's the theory. But in practice, these places are majorly underfunded. Some of our reptiles stay with us for years or more. Some never get requested back. Some get sent back. And so it's become a sanctuary of sorts. A reptile sanctuary, or at least that's how I try to make it when I'm feeling optimistic. I often feel like a background character, to be honest with you. Someone not worth bothering about. Someone off screen. And it gets me down sometimes. But I take great pleasure and pride in my job. I do my best to create environments and habitats that these creatures will feel happy in. This is my purpose, my place. This is where I belong. I guess for several reasons. And I try to stay positive, even when I sometimes find myself doing a late night shift in a lonely subterranean forest. Sorry, 1 second. Oops. Sorry about that. Spawn going, Mum, Mum, Mum. And I go, what? Come here. Suddenly, silence. Right, where was I? This is where I belong, I guess, for several reasons. And I try to stay positive, even when I sometimes find myself doing a late night shift in a lonely subterranean rainforest. It's busier than this normally, I swear. I lean back with a sigh, twisting my waist and stretching my back, stifling a yawn as I do. It's really late. I'll get the snake moved in, do my rounds of feedings, and then it should be time for me to clock out. And if not, Matteo won't mind if I go home a bit early. I peer through the plexiglass walls of the SCP tank, though I can't see it right now, despite its size. The enclosure is large, and there's plenty of places for it to hide. Reptiles are notoriously prone to hiding when they don't want to be seen, and they're good at it too. It's a dangerous creature, though, the Tarasque makes me uneasy when I can't see it. But I don't have all night, so I turn and begin to make my steady way back through the complex, passing between green leafy trees and tanks built into bamboo-style walls. I pass the homes of several of our inhabitants, some of which have been with us a long time, most of which I built and designed myself, I might add. I pause to look into some of the tanks along the way. I never tire of these reptiles, of any reptiles really. I think they're fascinating. The tank to my left is small and half filled with water. There's an elevated platform covered in dust, and another with little leaves. The tank has 3 inhabitants. They're frogs, covered in thick white-grey fur. The throat of the closest one swells as I fondly observe. Their croaks sound like musical notes, some deep, some higher pitched. Besides this enclosure resides the Ouroboros. The tank of the Ouroboros is square, and in the centre is the great snake in question. A long, scaled circle. Its eyes flicker briefly over to mine as it eats its tail, slowly but surely swallowing itself, digesting its own body at such a speed as to regrow it as it moves. Around it goes, around and around and around, forever, presumably. We've had this guy for 7 months straight now, and it's shown no sign of stopping. I give it a little salute and carry along my way. I cross over a short wooden bridge. My feet clank on the wood as a low little waterfall rushes and splashes off to my right. There are more tanks on this side, nestled amongst the leaves. This one here is at eye level, and I peer in. This is the tank of the Moo. Fascinating little lizard. Like geckos, though with slightly larger heads and feet. I tried to recreate its native Hawaiian home in there, and I think I did a pretty good job. There are several of the lizards visible right now, some on the plant, some scuttling through the sand and the water. I tap gently on the glass, and the closest one reacts. It turns to me at once and raises its tail, the water beside it rippling softly, evaporating into mist right before my eyes. The moa backs up a few paces, rattling its tail, and the mist falls as rain from the top of the tank, splashing onto the sand and back into the water. Some of it lands on another of the moas, and it stretches out, enjoying the feel of water on its skin. When the moa die, they return to the landscape, which I think is particularly fascinating. They don't live long lives. One of these guys died recently. By the look of it, they're tough to spot, the dead ones. But there he is, just off to the side. The majority of his body has crystallized into a rock-like solution, though leaves and tiny vines now sprout from what was once his back left leg. At a glance, you would think him just a part of his surroundings. I think it's awesome. A perfect return to nature. I carry on along my way, reaching into my pocket for the keys that will unlock the door to the freezer. As I said before, I just need to do some feeding and I'll be wrapping up for the night. I used to do this part with my girlfriend, the feeding, so it's a melancholy experience these days. I still enjoy it, but I miss her. The relationship effectively ended about 4 months ago. I've been doing okay since then, I guess. Work keeps me busy. I shiver as I step into the freezer, my breath clouding and my body unimpressed with the sudden change in climates. I grab the wheelbarrow and roll it back and forth a little to loosen the frost from the wheel, then push through the freezer and into the room beyond, the place we keep the meat to be thawed for the evening feed. Reptiles don't need to be fed particularly often. Most of the ones we keep in here get by with one feeding a week, or less, in some cases. There are snakes here that we only need to provide food for once a month. I load the barrow up and make sure I close all the doors behind me as I return to the humidity of the complex, moving relatively quickly before the sweat can freeze on my skin. I shut the freezer door behind me and with a grunt raise the bars of the wheelbarrow and set off, the wheel clattering against the wood tiles off the bridge and the floors. On my way round, I pass by the basilisk tank. The glass is made with a particular reflective surface that reduces the effects of the basilisk's notorious glare. The one we have in here is only a little thing, 4 feet or so. There's supposedly no limit to how big they can grow, though dependent on environment, climate, food, and all kinds of stuff. I grab the tongs we keep to the side and pluck a dead rat from the wheelbarrow, lowering it down into the cage and simulating movement, making it seem like the rat is snuffling around the basilisk's home, nudging aside the wood chips. And from the shadows of the cave that I built for the basilisk myself, out he slithers. Doesn't bother with speed. That isn't its tactic. It slithers out and raises its head, staring down into the rat's face, emitting a long, low hiss. It's a gorgeous-looking thing, this creature, golden-skinned and flecked with scales of caramel, with a bright, staring yellow eyes. There's a pattern in those eyes that is ever-changing. It ripples with a subtle and soft orange fire, dancing behind the pupils. The one we have here was born from the surprise egg of a rooster in central Colombia, and the snake has what might pass at first glance as a rooster-like crest along the slope of its head. The basilisk draws steadily closer, keeping its eyes ever fixed on the rat. I stop moving the lifeless creature around, holding it in place and simulating the effects of the basilisk paralysis. The effect of the basilisk stare is to lock the joints of the victim's body, sending signals transmitted through vision to the poor prey's brain, tricking it into freezing up its host's muscles. The basilisk then moves in for the kill, neck first if the victim's lucky. Otherwise, they simply have to endure until the basilisk is satisfied. A moment or two more and the basilisk takes the bait, lunging down for the rat's head and wrapping it with its body with surprising speed around its limbs. A backup measure, I should think, in the event this creature is not fully frozen. I release the rat from the tongs and draw them back out of the tank carefully, sliding the lid closed and leaving the creature to enjoy its meal. But not before its closest eye swivels around to stare at me, at this human that came with its meal. But my eyes meet the basilisk, and I feel a sudden shiver run down my spine as my brain responds to the snake's signals. The hand with the tongs starts to stiffen and twitch, and I drop the apparatus to the ground with a clang. But it's okay. This happens sometimes. I force myself to blink and to turn away, stretching my fingers and massaging my palm before crouching down to retrieve the tongs. I have pins and needles for now, but my hand will be fine after a minute or two. I continue on my route through the reptile house. The hiss of filters are particularly irregular this evening. They fade in and out at various intervals, merging with the gentle rush of the waterfalls and pumped steam, and forming a part of the secret atmosphere, along with the tropical rainforest sounds we play on loop through the speakers. I wheel the barrow over one of our longest bridges, the one that connects to another halfway across, and built upon poles above a relatively large sandy pit beneath us. It isn't just sand there. There are heat bars and large sections of water, and a few appropriate plants as well. The creatures down there are by far my least favourite. They terrify and disgust me. And that's saying something because, as I said, I love reptiles. I'd rather not go into detail about these ones, if that's okay. I just grit my teeth and mentally switch off, getting done what needs to be done. I grab 2 large chunks of reddish miscellaneous meat from the wheelbarrow, and with a grunt of effort I fling them both over the side of the bridge, one to my left and one to my right. One slab lands with a thud in the sand, with a little cloud of dust, the other in the water with a splash. 2 of the creatures below jump suddenly into action. One moment they are still as statues, resting amongst the rocks, and on the next they are scuttling over the sand on their hands and feet, snarling and roaring, those quiet, back-of-the-throat crocodilian roars at each other and tearing into the meat that has fallen into the sand. The third of the reptiles that are kept below does not move. She does not go after the food. She simply remains in its place, crouched on one of the rocks. She stares at me, her fingers splayed out for balance. The skin beneath her chin is pulsing in and out, in and out. But other than that, there are no signs of movement. The eyes, unblinking, bore into mine. This is no basilisk gaze. This is no basilisk, but its gaze is far harder to turn from. Turn I do, though, and I carry on through the complex. 2 more stops to go. It's a fair trek to my penultimate stop. At the very, very far end of the complex, there is a door that leads to a metal railing, and this railing forms part of a walkway high above a large, deep pool. I push through and roll the wheelbarrow across the metal, the platform rattling as I cross the hallway to the halfway point. I set the barrow down and put my hands on the rail, looking down at the softly shimmering water below. I can't see the pool's occupant very well tonight, only a faint shadow in the depths. I grab the final piece of significant meat from the wheelbarrow, the heaviest by far, and I haul it over the edge. It hits the water with a loud splash, and I watch as the shadow beneath it becomes larger and larger, drawing up to the surface with a keen hunger, and then it grabs a slab of meat and drags it back down to the depths. It turns and swims back down, barely breaking the surface as it does so, and I cannot help a little disappointment. I catch only the briefest glimpse of her silvery black ridged tails, flicking out with a frothy splash before descending back down with the rest of her. Ah well, I can always rely on my final stop to be a friendly one. Back within the warm and the tropical humidity of the complex, deep in the middle of the enclosure, is a small, low-walled enclosure that I built myself for a tortoise I've named Enki. I feed Enki with lettuce from my hand, and he munches happily as he chews and swallows it down. To be honest, I'm not convinced that Enki is even supposed to be here with us. He's warm-blooded, which is quite interesting for a reptile, but other than that, he's basically just a normal tortoise. His shell is white and his scales dark grey, but he behaves just as any other tortoise would do. We actually had to fit a modified AC unit into his cave so he could cool down if he needed. He has a shallow little pool also that he sometimes sits in. You're a good boy, aren't you, Enki? Yeah? I murmur as he eats his food. I scratch his head lightly, which I think he likes. He continues to munch, and the hissing of the filters grows louder. Just a little closer. And then, to my surprise, Enki does something rather atypical. He stops eating. There's still food in my hand, but he doesn't take it. He just stops. I watch with curiosity as he steadily retreats, backing up a couple of cautious steps, and then heads into his cave. Enki, you okay, bro? I ask as he draws in, his head hiding himself in his shell in the shadows. And as he does so, a sense of creeping, gnawing dread begins to seep into my constitution. I am struck by a couple of quick urges in succession. 1, to turn around. 2, to run, though I'm careful to do neither. Instead, I slowly rise to my feet, heart now pounding, walking calmly and coolly round the edge of Enki's enclosure, till I am standing on the opposite side. Then, with my vision fixed on the ground, I carefully check my surroundings. My pulse races. What am I going to see? Is something stalking me through the complex? Blood pounds in my ears as I look from place to place, wincing as I check every new location. But I see nothing. The fear remains, but I cannot see the threat. I slowly raise my hand to tap the button on my headset. Mateo, I murmur. No response. Fucker's probably fallen asleep or gone for a piss. Mateo! But my colleague does not respond. I checked my surroundings again. Enki is just below me. The Tassarisk enclosure is just off to my right. No, Tarasque. Sorry, not Tassarisk. Tarasque. I keep wanting to say Tassarisk, but it's not. I pause. I have not seen the Tarasque tonight. We only have the one, but he's an expert at hiding, despite his size. I head to the plexiglass of his enormous tank, studying it carefully. I'll give it a quick look over. No more than a minute or so, then I'm going to get the fuck out. Less than ideal to have the reptile loose in the complex, but then I'm also not planning on risking my life here. I see a reflection of a scared face in the glass, and I shift the focus of my gaze so that I'm peering into the shadows beyond. The Tarasque is the size of a small lion. He's a horrifying looking thing, and one of the most frightening we keep here at the complex. I'd rank him perhaps just a little lower than the things beneath the bridge. The Tarasque is more animalistic, though, and that makes him both more and paradoxically less predictable. It's tough to explain. He has 6 reptilian legs, and like our other inhabitants, is covered in scales. He is dark green and black, a living shadow in the rainforest, and his head, his face. The Tassarus head is too large for its body. Its face resembles a cross between a man and a lizard, with the proportions and dimensions of a great, hungry frog. Its teeth are, for the most part, square and regular, and when it grins, the teeth stretch disturbingly from one side of its face to the other. The teeth are the giveaway. That's how you find it. The hissing of the filters come to a sudden stop. And it's then, in that momentary silence, that I see widespread grin through the leaves in the shadows. My heart stops in my chest for a second. Above the grin are the eyes, wide and orange, with the tiniest, most focused little pinpricks of pupils in their very centres. How the hell did it get out? Is the first question that comes to mind, but I suppose it doesn't matter. Not at this moment anyway. The second is, what the hell am I going to do? I take a retreating step. The grin of the Tarasque stretches a little wider. I retreat a little more, putting as much space as I can between myself and the beast. I do not look directly into its eyes. I look at its feet and attempt to be non-threatening, non-prey-like. But back I go, back through the leaves of the canopy, heart hammering. Stay cool, Kenny, stay cool. I shoot a quick, risky glance over to a door on my left. It has a series of thin plastic strips across it to help keep the heat in. It leads to another section of the complex, one in which there are labs I can lock myself in as a defensive measure. Beyond those doors is also an exit, one leading through the leaves and back to the main office that separates this secret complex to the reptile house, the one that's open to the public. I look back to the Tarasque and realise to my dismay that it's gone. The sound of thudding, pounding feet starts getting louder and louder, the sound of a heavy tail dragging against tile. I cannot work out where it's coming from. A scream catches in my throat, and I break, running from the scene and tearing through the doorway into the next room, running as fast as my legs will carry me. I stumble as I race over one of the bridges, fearful that any moment I will fall, but I regain my balance and carry on along my way towards the exit. I pass by the basilisk. As with before, its shimmering yellow eyes meets mine through the plexiglass, and I feel the slightest stiffening begin to take hold of my legs. Fuck no! I shout out loud as I trip and crash into a tropical tree, wincing as I try desperately to massage the flow back into my joints. I quickly look back the way I came. I cannot see it, but I can hear it, which of course is far worse in the current standing. I shoot terrified looks all around me, but I cannot tell where this thing is coming from. I stagger to my feet and hobble to the nearest door. I swear I feel the warmth of an impending presence right behind me, but when I swivel to stare in horror at the creature behind me, there's nothing there. I swear and slam my way through to the corridor that links the complex to the office, drawing it closed with a heavy slam and initiating the locking sequence. Tumbling my way back to the main desk to find Matteo eating a packet of chips, watching some dumb movie on the screen. Matteo! I shout, and aware of my presence for the first time, he almost jumps out of his skin. Kenny! What the fuck, dude? You here for that snake? Why'd you sneak up on me like that? Sneak up on you? Didn't you hear all the doors slamming? Why didn't you respond when I called you through the headset? Oh shit, man, my bad. I forgot to turn it back on. Matteo reaches up to his ear and returns his headset to life with a small beep. I sigh and collapse into my seat, doing my best not to hyperventilate. Matteo regards me. You good, man? No, not really. The Tarasque is out. The Tarasque is out. The what? He replies in panic, jumping up and out of his seat, spilling chips all over the floor. Fuck, for real? I nod. For real? Like, actually? Yes. He swears under his breath and grabs up the emergency phone. He'll be calling the specialists in, though they won't be here until tomorrow morning. I pass on what I know as the phone rings, then sit back and try to calm down a little as he passes the info onto the people on the line. He's actually back in work mode now. He's scanning the screens and relaying times and information and such. I give it a few more minutes, then I stand up and with a sigh, clap him on the back. I'm heading into the office to log the incident. And as I do, I pass the frilled snake, our newcomer. I wipe some sweat from my forehead and I pause to admire it. It's rainbow-coloured, the light refracting in its frills to create a prism effect on the walls of its tank. Sorry, friend, I say after a moment. You'll have to wait a little while longer before you get to try out your new home. Hang tight. The incident log is a book kept near the back of the ones in one of the lesser used rooms. There are lockers in here, diagrams of unusual reptiles, and a window that looks into the complex. The secret complex, that is. I make a mental note to lock this door behind me and to double check the others before I leave this evening, just in case. I open the book and flip to the latest page, struggling to get the face of the Tarasque out of my mind. The Tarasque is a particularly interesting one. It's gotten out of its closure 3 times before, over the course of its 4 years with us. We keep trying to fast track it to a more secure location, but for some reason, nobody wants to house it. I grab the pen and find the latest space for an entry. It's possible that nobody left the enclosure door open. There's every chance that the creature has learnt how to do it himself. I guess we'll be adding more security then, more expensive and costly measures to keep it contained. Necessary, of course, but still. Let me tell you a little bit more about the Tarasque. The Tarasque possesses something unlike anything else that we've had amongst our inhabitants here, and that's its bite. The Tarasque finds its target. It tears the limbs off its prey, feasting happily on the delicious flesh. And in the moment of its bite, its saliva pours into the victim's blood, and it's able to actually alter their DNA. It's slow at first, but it quickly picks up speed, and over the course of a day or two, the prey rapidly loses much of its former cognitive function. It loses fur and hair and develops just enough reptilian properties to allow it to regrow its limbs. And these are the limbs which need regenerating, as the Tasrisk, of course, has recently torn them brutally off. The Tarasque then keeps tabs on its prey, allowing it to escape, but watching patiently, stalking it, careful to see where it might go. And once those delicious limbs have fully regrown, well, then it's time for its next meal. And so the cycle continues, over and over, until the creature that the Tasser so cruelly targeted is able to make a permanent escape, or is eaten greedily beyond repair. I read through the last 3 incidents in the log. 2 weeks ago, Angelo sprained foot on bridge 4 by the water tanks. First aid applied in office. 1 month ago, Matteo bitten by winged frog. Treatment and antidote applied within first hour. And 4 months ago, Asher bitten by Tassarisk. Treatment applied to no effect. DNA alteration sequence commenced. I rub a hand across my forehead and the new incident to the log in shaking fingers. I really did love Asher a great deal. She was my first and to date only girlfriend. Why do we keep such a terrifying monster as the Tarasque in here? At all, you might ask. The answer is simple. Without it, we have no hope for an antidote. But until we find an organization willing to try some experiments, then here it will remain. And I'll do my job over and over, around and around, like the Ouroboros. This is where I belong, here in the reptile house. Oops. Fuck. So, what do you guys think of that one? The ending got me. I was not expecting that. Not gonna lie, I was half expecting him to be a lizard thing. Like, makes sense, right? He loves the lizards. He's really good at building the enclosures for them. All that sort of shit. And I'm like, oh yeah, he's gonna be like some sentient lizard boy. Right? Nope. And yeah, bro guy, it does sound like an SCP. That's why I quite like this, because it's like an SCP, but not. So it's like, it's what I imagine happens before these things get taken in by the SCP people. But yeah, hi everyone that's come in. Right. Yeah. A good twist in the end is what makes it like the story just that perfect, because yeah. And yeah, I'm gonna do another one, don't worry. And okay, these ones I've not watched all of them. Read all of them. Oh, that's a long one. No, that one wasn't that long. Okay. This one is called Don't Look Up. I've not actually read this all the way through, so I still have no clue what's going to fucking happen. Don't turn around. Be quiet. Don't look up. Izzy tried to remind herself as she rushed through the halls of the old building she worked, armed with nothing but a flashlight. It was the beginning of yet another long night, she recounted. Since her mother had fallen ill, Izzy had to find a job. Any job. But the small town she lived in proved scarce in work. Getting an interview as a security guard for the old asylum wasn't that bad, right? There wasn't anyone there anymore, right? Mr. Hallen, the owner of the now desolate building, assured her that all the rumours of the hauntings were mere urban legends. The dark, hollow shell once bustled with life. Doctors, nurses, and volunteers whisking through the halls to tend to patients of all different backgrounds. Their treatments at the time were strange to any outsider, but nobody really suspected anything sinister in the brightly decorated building. Everyone seemed so happy. Today, its reputation is malevolent. Since the discovery of butchered bodies, human sacrifices, and research involving infant bodies that I don't care to go into detail about. It almost seems like the walls themselves breathe with agony. Citizens report hearing screams and seeing silhouettes in the windows. Though the place has been abandoned for over 40 years, nothing more than children's stories and wives' tales, Izzy was again assured. All she had to do was walk the halls and watch the cameras. Occasionally scare off some teenagers looking to find a place to smoke and drink. God knows what else. Just rooms. Check the handles. Check for lights. Don't turn around. Be quiet. Don't look up. Izzy turned down the next hallway, paying no attention to the footsteps she could hear echoing in step with her own. Night after night it was the same thing. The footsteps, the shadows, the cold on the back of her neck as she passed by the graffitied rooms. Izzy was almost to the staircase leading to the second floor. She knew what this meant. It had been 3 months since she began working in the position. Her first day wasn't so bad, but night after night the building began to peel back its layers. Whispers from the shadow became more frequent, ranging from a pin drop to a figure darting across your peripheral vision to much more aggressive focus. Don't turn around. Be quiet. Don't look up. Izzy began to ascend the dark staircase, looking down at the steps instead of at what was in front of her. You can't let your mind slip away here. 1, 2, 3, 4. She continued as she stepped, counting helps with the whispers. Nothing helps wedging between people who aren't there, or rancid smells of rotting flesh, or seeing the bloodied bodies of the... No, focus. 10, 11, 12, 13. Halfway to the top. A sigh of relief escaped when she finally reached the final step. Tonight was worse than other nights. Oh yeah, the full moon. Why does it have to be a full moon? Izzy stopped to catch a breath and gaze out the open window. The willows outside were swaying in the breeze, captivated her so deeply that, upon hearing the sound of the broken glass from the other side of the hallway, she scanned the room, but by instinct, before immediately turning her gaze to the ground with affright. Did it see me? Did I make eye contact? Just walk. It didn't happen. She began her stride again. Don't turn around. Be quiet. Don't look up. She chanted to herself again. Her eyes watered as she heard from behind. Her eyes watered as she heard from behind her. Don't turn around. Cold breath rushed past her neck and through her hair as the words creaked past her face. Damn it, she was seen. The clock has begun. Faster. Izzy power walked through the halls, hoping maybe this time she can leave the building unscathed. The door to the left slammed open, ripping her attention but not breaking her stride. Spotted. Don't turn around, Izzy. Izzy ran to the other side of the hallway, to the staircase to go back down. Doors suddenly began slamming open with loud crashes. Papers flew like a vortex. Equipment sprung to life, dancing around the room in an attempt to trip Izzy. A stray folder caught under her foot just as she reached the staircase. She fell down the flight of stairs with loud thuds and screams. The whole way down. Be quiet. She knew she didn't have much time left. The front doors were right in sight. Just a bit more. Izzy peeled herself off the ground, ignoring the pain in her leg. No time. She sprinted as fast as she could towards the doors, past the faceless creatures crawling from every room, past the holes with small hands within, grasping at a life they didn't get to live, past the wallpaper that was seeping a liquid that she didn't want to think about. Out, out, out. She just had to make it to her car, that's all. Past the humanoid figures littering the halls, past the wailing of babies and broken mothers, past the cries of human suffering incarnate. Out, go, now! The cold wind threatened to freeze the sweat off her face as she burst through the front door and out into the parking lot. Keys, keys, keys! She jumbled with her keys as she quickly approached the car. With footsteps behind her keeping step, she felt something start to wrap around her hair. No! With the very last bit of strength she had, she pulled forward, racing to her car, ripping the door open and jumping inside while locking the door. It took a bit for the bloodied hands to leave her window and the agonized moans to die down. That's okay. Izzy couldn't move if she wanted to. She cried with relief and fear. She couldn't do this any longer. I quit, she told herself, as her shaky hands tried to insert the key into the ignition. As the car started up, she glanced into her rearview mirror and froze as she made eye contact with a little girl whose grin widened by the second. Don't look up. It would be 5 days before the police found Izzy. Her mother had been worried sick when the sun was in the sky and her sweet daughter had not returned. The community worked together to force the lazy officials to search the building, or they would go in themselves. Officer Hallen was the first one to lay eyes on her since her disappearance. There, sat in the corner of the security office, battered and bruised, she was down to her torn and dirtied shirt that just barely read security on the back. Her arms and legs were a swarm of deep, dark, dirt-filled scratches. Blood oozed from the tips of her fingers and the heels of her feet. Her scalp looked as though she had been dragged by it. Her hair tried in vain to hide the bright patches of pale white and red skin. She rocked back and forth, mumbling to herself, tears streaming from her one remaining eye. Izzy didn't cry or scream as she was loaded into the ambulance. She didn't shed a tear when she was told they would be unable to save her eye. She didn't make a peep when she was reunited at the hospital with her mother. In fact, she hardly made any sound for the next 4 years. She would only stare off into the corner and mumble. Making progress was hard, But I was determined to find out what she saw and experienced. Month after month, Izzy would show improvement in speaking on her events, only to completely backslide into silence around the full moon. But I have patience. Shit! The voice across the desk from me hissed. Your brother should have taken that bitch out when he had the chance. Nobody would have known she wasn't already dead when he got there. He slapped his glass pitcher off the desk. Water splashed across my vision as a large hand lunged from the spritz to grab my throat before I could protest. You listen, and you listen good. It's all up to you now. You cannot let this report get out to anyone. You must silence her. If she goes around blabbing that story to people, shit will hit the fan. The town will have our fucking heads if they knew what happened there, yours included. He released his grip of my face and walked to the window, gazing out as if to look at the memory itself. They'll never understand what we had to do. Why we had to They won't understand. So play ball and shut that bitch up. He turned to stare at me one more time, his eyes boring holes into my soul. I'll have your brother take care of the mum. Your first priority should be protecting the public from hearing about what happened in the Hallen house. Are we clear? Yes, Daddy. And that's it so far. But this is a person called Cat on Bed. And they are a new writer. And yeah, I thought I'd showcase that a bit because it looks like quite an interesting new series. Very interested on what they're going to do with it. I do like that they added the reason why that person was willing to put up with that shit. Like, anyone that wasn't desperate would have just quit instantly. Like, yeah, fuck that. But they were desperate for the money. Their family needed it. Okay, night, James Hun. See ya later. Right. Quick check of a thing. So, Brainless, do you know when Slim is doing his thing? Hi, Pearl. Okay. We don't know. The demons is in the asylum from the satanic rituals. You're bad. This one looks interesting, and it has very good ratings from people. I've just seen my family's abandoned old farm being explored by someone on TikTok. He shouldn't have gone there. That's all right, sweetheart. I understand that. I've got dyslexia as well, but mine's more writing it down so that I can read. Okay, it's worth saying it, trying to read out loud. But if I have to write something down, no chance at all. So I get it. Like, dyslexia fucking sucks, man. Okay. It's late. I'm doing my usual. Sitting in bed, long past the time I need to be asleep, scrolling mindlessly through TikTok. It's a bad habit, I know. But you're here reading Reddit, right? I lazily flick the last watched video away. A cat wearing a helmet fashioned out of a melon. And a live feed takes its place. It's dark, with torches or headlamps making almost a strobing effect in some crusty old building. Ghost hunters or something like that. Not my thing. I raise my finger to scroll again, but at the last second something catches my eye that stops me dead. The camera pans past a black and white framed photograph on the wall. It's my grandparents on their wedding day. I sit stock still, watching intently as the camera moves forward. I would recognize that photo anywhere, having examined it countless times as a child visiting their farmhouse. It's my favourite picture out of any hanging on their walls. This TikToker couldn't be in my grandparents' old farm, surely. It was true it had been left to fall into a state of disrepair after their passing. I looked at their handle. Abandoned Explorer 305. I made a mental note to click on their page and see where else they've been. But for now, I cannot bring myself to look away from this feed, in case it disappears forever. They move further into the living room. A leather armchair, well worn in its day, but now the cushions were sunken in and the fabric torn beyond repair. The fireplace, exposed stone and an enormous oak mantel, once the impressive focal point of the room, now warped and cracked. The lucky horseshoes that had hung from it littered the hearth, dull and lifeless. They had always been pride of place over the fire, polished and would glint in the firelight of an evening. The person holding the camera is speaking. I'd hardly noticed I was so wrapped up in a cloud of nostalgia and outrage at this space being invaded. There are so many horseshoes around here, he was saying. They're over the door thresholds. There was one laid into the kitchen floor, and these ones look like they used to hang over the fireplace. Now, I know this is a farm and they probably did have horses, but they're just everywhere. Now, everyone knows horseshoes are known as good luck charms, but unless you're into your folklore, you might not know they're also used to ward off evil spirits. I rolled my eyes. Common knowledge. I mean, yeah, that is. Another TikToker claiming to be an expert on the paranormal. His observation does set off a small prickle on the back of my neck, though. There were a lot of horseshoes at the farm. I tucked that bit of knowledge away for future reference. Many years ago they had horses, but since the advent of modern tractors and farming methods, they were not needed, and neither Granny or Grandpa had any great love for horses that I was aware of. Granny had always been a tad superstitious, so horseshoes, lucky heather, four-leaf clovers, that sort of thing. For the most part, I loved going to stay at Granny and Grandpa's when I was small, apart from going to the bathroom alone. The only bathroom was upstairs at the furthest end of the house from the kitchen or living room. To a kid, it felt like an epic journey. Going up wasn't so bad. Once the door from the living room shut, you would find yourself in a cool, quiet passageway. All sounds of life muffled by the thick wood. The air was so still you could hear a pin drop. You'd walk along, then turn back 180 degrees to go up the stairs. The upstairs landing was split onto 2 levels. Excuse me. So you'd step down onto the back landing, and then take a right to get to the bathroom. It was going back down that was the problem. Since I was old enough to go to the bathroom unaccompanied, once I turned that corner and got to the top of the stairs, a feeling would hit like an icy finger in the small of your back. Run. I would run down the stairs and back to the kitchen as quickly as my little legs would carry me. More than that, it was imperative that at no point did I turn and look back up at the landing. Bad things would happen if I looked back. As a child, I couldn't really express these feelings, but now, as I remember it, it feels like a creeping black mass seeping out of the walls of that black landing, coalescing, and all it would take to give it a corporeal form would be a terrified look back from a fleeing child. Then I would heave open the wooden doors, and it felt like the colour was suddenly suspended back into the world. The warmth and noise of a busy family home flooding on my senses, like pressing play and the film restarts where it left off. In the live camera feed, they approach the solid oak door. It's hanging on one hinge, slightly ajar, and swayed almost imperceptibly. I notice before the cameraman says aloud that there is a large cast iron horseshoe, big enough for a Shire horse or a Clydesdale, nailed above the threshold, that I don't remember, but it suddenly feels important, like a talisman thrown up in a last-ditch effort to stop something. I grip my phone harder with a clammy hand, positive that they should not go deeper into the bowels of the house. I look at the comments flashing up. It's so creepy, seriously bad vibes. Did anyone else just see a shadow? With a shaky hand, I start typing a comment, telling them to not go in there, to just leave. As if they would listen to me, just another voice in the throng. In my peripheral vision, as I'm typing, I can see the guy push open the door, which gives way with a creak. And just as I'm about to press send, I hear a sharp intake of breath. What the? I hear him whisper. I drop my phone on the bed in shock. Standing side by side in the passageway are two gaunt figures dressed in nightgowns. They wear perpetually wide grins which stretch their papery grey skin taut. Where their eyes should belong are only dark pits. What could be boreholes straight through into the inky depths of hell itself? Somehow, worse than that, Granny and Grandpa were holding hands. It was unmistakably them, despite their demonic manifestation. Though it was only a second, it feels like I stare into those twisted faces for half an eternity. All hell breaks loose on camera. Abandoned Explorer 305 turns on his heels and runs back the way he came. The camera work falls into disarray as he bolts for the exit, but I swear in that fraction of a second, as his phone whips around, the creepishly wide grins on their faces twist into a grisly snarl. I am transfixed by my phone screen, listening to the TikTok guy's heavy breathing and watching the torch flit around on screen, lighting up the walls and floors at random as he makes a break for it. He is close to the back door. As long as he doesn't turn the wrong way, 5 or 6 more paces and he'll be out. Then, shockingly loud on the little phone speakers is an ungodly screech which makes me jump about a foot off my bed. Live has ended. The feed has just gone. I tap the screen futilely. Nothing. Did he make it out? I search for his handle on the app. Nothing comes up. I sit for a long time just staring into space, heart thumping. I should have commented sooner, as soon as I realised they were in that house. Maybe that would have stopped them going any further. A notification pops up on my smartphone. A direct message on TikTok. Strangely, there's no account name with the message. Come to us. Very direct. No ambiguity there. I sigh and reach for my bedside table to cross the latest attempt off the list. Communication with the undead via the internet is a new development. An extra deep grave didn't do the trick. Rocks in their mouths, black salt, holy water from lords, a stake through the heart. Nothing keeps these two restless souls in their grave for long. We don't know if it's the land itself, a cruel curse upon the family, or something else. Did they see the black thing I was so afraid of as a kid? Was that the reason? Or a symptom? I glanced down at the list of things yet to try. Next up, decapitation of the corpses. I don't relish the thought of that one. I fire off a quick text to my brother. Trouble at the mill. That's the code. Code for get your shovel. We're off to dig up our granny and grandpa again to see if we can finally get them to rest in peace like you're supposed to do. The problem is, each time we try to end this and fail, every time they come back they are more changed than before. The last time they climbed out of the graves they looked like themselves, only dead. Upsetting, but to be expected. The nightmarish figures that have been seen tonight were a world away from that. I worry we're giving them power, feeding them somehow. But we can't just let them roam free. especially when other people get caught in the crossfire. I think this is going to require outside help. So, that looks cool. Oh my god, there are so many comments on this one. Oof. Are you starting to get all the snuffs? Oh, thank you, little wolf. Right, I think this is going to be my last one. Yeah. Oh, see you, Tiny Captain. Have a good night. So, he keeps knocking. If I manage to get out in time, please, someone check. Address removed? That's where I live. Please, just save me. It's not too late yet. If you can do it fast enough, then I might have a fighting chance. He won't go away. He won't go away. I know he's going to kill me, but he's not breaking in. He keeps knocking. He keeps waiting. He wants to. He will. But he just keeps knocking. I don't know what I did wrong. I've never done anything wrong, have I? I don't do anything. I barely exist. My presence is so non-existent. In first grade, I was locked in my classroom's closet and nobody noticed for 30 minutes. And nobody's going to notice I'm gone now. This isn't going well. I don't know how to explain any of this right or how much time I have. Maybe he'll get impatient and finally burst in. There's no way for me to know. When I was 15, I met a guy named Nick. I never spoke to him. He never spoke to me. Barely spoke to anyone, as a matter of fact, which might have been why we would sit next to each other during lunch. He would usually read while he ate, although I never saw him turn a page. He would just open the book at different spots every time and just stare at it. I ignored it, of course. We weren't on speaking terms. I wonder what he might have done if I asked about it. Would he still be knocking? Would I be free to leave my house like before? Or would it have happened sooner? I don't know what he wants from me. Well, I do. he's going to kill me. But I really, really just don't know why. It's terrifying, of course, but I'm confused. There's nothing special about me. It took until my senior year for me to realise we live across from each other. I was trying to get ready for school, and I looked out of my window, and he was in the house across from mine, standing in the window, just staring at something. It might have been me. Even from a distance, he looked so unfocused. I assumed it wasn't me. We weren't on speaking terms. Maybe this has nothing to do with who I am. Maybe it was just convenience. A twisted man that's zeroing in on the closest, easiest target for some nobody across the street worth nothing. The idea that this doesn't even mean something to him, and he's just picking me by chance, by sheer bad luck. I hate that more than if he had some deluded logic behind this. But that would have to be the explanation, right? There's nothing special about me. We ended up working at the same grocery store in college. It was a local business, and the pay wasn't amazing, but it was better than nothing. This is the point where I started to think he might have been stalking me. He applied for the same job about a week after he saw me working there. Nick stared in through the store window, came in, brought a bottle of dish soap, and then left. It would be wrong to say he was staring directly at me. His eyes almost looked glazed over, as if they just couldn't focus on anything. But I did get the impression that he was watching me, which wasn't made better by him becoming my co-worker. But I told myself I was being ridiculous. He'd have no reason to stalk me. I'm not even a very good-looking woman. Besides, we weren't on speaking terms. I should have quit the job the moment I saw him in there. None of this would have happened if I'd just walked out of his life. If I moved houses, changed jobs, found something else to do somewhere far from that man. My life was never supposed to turn out like this. I refuse to believe that it could end like this. Something so irrational, so random and horrible and unmotivated couldn't truly be possible. It couldn't happen. Not to me. There's nothing special about me. Things I left in the break room would go missing. I have ADHD, so losing things has never seemed odd to me. I drop them off in all sorts of bizarre places, and it can take hours to realise where I put something. I usually don't even remember why I put something somewhere. It would be more innocuous things at first. A water bottle, name tag, my hat. It sucked losing those things, but I chalked it up to ADHD and moved on. But then they would start reappearing. My water bottle was next to the cash register. My name tag was on the break room floor. My hat was found by one of my co-workers, hung on a stool in the men's room. I have bad memory, but I knew those hadn't been in there before. And more importantly, I definitely didn't put my hat in a restroom that I've never entered. I bothered all my co-workers about it, and they were all confused as well, agreeing that my things definitely weren't there before. When we had a bit of spare time, we gathered to figure out what happened. We came up with plenty of theories, but Nick was the first to say that maybe I didn't misplace these things to begin with. Maybe there was a thief. and they were trying to pull some kind of scheme. It was one of the few times I heard him say anything. We weren't on speaking terms. I almost wish he'd say something. 13 days of silence and knocking, and silence and knocking, and silence and knocking. Doesn't he need to sleep? Doesn't he need to eat? Is there nothing better for him to do than sit and wait and knock? Why go through the trouble for just me? There's nothing special about me. He was the one who proposed the idea of a thief, so I obviously thought it couldn't have been him. Because why say that? Why out himself if he was guilty? Maybe he wasn't. I don't actually know. I suppose I don't have concrete proof that he was the one behind it, and it could have been someone completely different. I might have nothing to do with Nick. I'll never know. Maybe I should have asked him about it earlier. Maybe I've been mistaken this whole time. Back then, when we sat next to each other, he could have just spent all those lunches waiting for me to say something, pretending to read, hoping I'd talk first. We weren't on speaking terms, but I could have changed that. The knocking just stopped again. It goes on and off every day. The first time it stopped, I finally risked trying to open the door, but the moment I touched the doorknob, he started knocking again. I tried calling the police, but the call didn't go through. I tried every single other exit, the back door, the window, the cellar door, but with every attempt, he's waiting there, and he's still knocking. I can't live like this much longer. It's been nearly 2 weeks. I've never done anything to him. But maybe that's it. This whole time. Maybe he wanted me. But I'm average. I'm boring. I want so badly to get back outside, but the worst part is that I don't know what for. No family, no friends, not even a pet. I'm living just to stay alive, and the more I think about it, the more I realise this will be the most interesting thing in my entire life. The one special thing about me will be how I die. The knocking is back again, and it's getting dark. I keep the curtains shut all the time now, but I can see there's no light. I don't get much in the way of sleep now, but I might as well try. And I'll have to hope that he doesn't decide to enter. Good night, I suppose. Please help me. Yeah. That one was good. I want to know if they carry on that one now. I have to fucking know. Because it seemed like generic stalker shit until every time she moves somewhere, they're there. Oh, quite a lot. They use repetition in that quite a lot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it went in repetition. We're not on speaking terms. Then the next paragraph ended with, there's nothing special about me. We're not on speaking terms. There's nothing special about me. Repetition can be great for poetry, but in a story, it can be a bit of a tricky one, I guess. It felt weird having to keep say it out loud over and over again like that. But I guess it does sort of portray the chaotic, cluttered mind of them. Keep doubling down like, but we weren't speaking. I couldn't have led him on because we weren't even speaking. I don't know why he thinks something like this because we weren't speaking. Like, it sort of makes sense. Yeah. I agree. The Book of Mormon. Ugh. Right. Fucking hell. They even use such weird language in the Book of Mormon that they didn't even use back then. There's a lot of doth and doth and thys and thighs and ah. Doth thou wilt thee? Dost thou will thee thy? Right. Is our little cyborg live yet? No. Is he going live? Does anybody know? So is Vvednesdays going live today or not? Thank you. And yeah, mine's just having a moment as well. Curse you, technology. But yeah. Does anyone have any requests for next week? Because, yeah. Anyone has anything they particularly want me to read out, let me know. I do not mind doing that. I can try. Is Lovecraft open source? Yeah. I'll admit I only started looking for stories today. So I didn't have that many. I need to make sure I always have a nice backlog of stories to read. So I can do a longer stream next time because I'll probably have more to actually read because I will be more prepared. Yeah. Awesome. Lovecraft is in the public domain. No. No. Yeah, next week I will read Lovecraft for you. He was good with the writings, but a bit of yeah, a lot of the old writers are now kind of low-key cancelled because they weren't woke. I don't know why they'd expect an author in an era where racism was normal to not be racist, but I get it ish, I guess. Like, come on, I wasn't surprised that any of them were, because everyone was back then pretty much. Although Lovecraft was more recent than the others. But yeah, anyone in history, don't ever expect them to be a good person, especially not by today's standard. Just don't, and they're not. They're not. Yeah, Wednesdays are always going to be like the scary stories. Like, that's something that I always wanted to do. I've just had an unfortunate where last week I was unwell, and then I was off for a week before that, so I kind of missed a few. But yeah, I want to do scary stories every Wednesday. And I am going to try to get back into doing other videos and shit. But yeah, I've had a lot going on, and my brain hasn't been great, and then my health hasn't been great because my brain hasn't been great, because, you know, they like to bounce off each other like two hyperactive children on a fucking playground. Oh wow, I didn't know that. That would be really interesting now, because not like I haven't actually read Lovecraft. Like, yeah, that's not something I've ever delved into. Right. What has the brainless one said? Wow. That's crazy. Was he really that, like... Jesus. Like, the only thing I know... Wow. The only thing I know about H.P. Lovecraft is in regards to the Necronomicon. And that's he never once mentioned that the Necronomicon was made out of human flesh. That is a complete invention by Evil Dead, the movie. And so, like, it kind of went from there. But it never says that the Necronomicon is made out of human flesh in Lovecraft's, like, book about the Necronomicon. Weird little tidbit. Oh, right. I'm going to end it. Slim Cyborg was apparently going to go live today, I think, but I don't know. So, oops. This is his channel. Okay. He is over here if he goes live. If he does, I'm sure I'll be there for a little bit. But yeah, otherwise I'm going to go and chill on the Discord a little bit. Might play a game. And yeah, like relax a bit because today's been like a weird day. But I'm going to hopefully get back into the swing of doing a few more live streams. I'm going to be doing the Wednesdays. I want to do a few game streams because I like gaming. And I am going to be doing some stuff on Lulz Cows and just other shit that pisses me off. Generally, like media that pisses me off because I'm a gobby opinionated bitch. And yeah, so I'm going to do some of that. But let me know what you want me to read. Is there any games you want to watch me utterly fail at playing? Because while I love playing games, I'm shit at playing them. I'm not even going to pretend I'm good. I'm a really bad person at games. But I enjoy it. So you can laugh at me and I can laugh at myself. So that would be fun, right? Right? But yeah. Toodles, everyone. Oh, normally we were playing Phasmophobia for ages. Now we're playing Wobbly Life. And we're just chatting shit. Like, just talking. That anyone can come in and chat. It's not like it's a in club or anything. So, anyone feel free to drop by and have a little say hello. Yeah. I shall see you later, everyone. Bye.